We're third generation grape farmers. My grandfather planted the vineyards after the cherry market fell out in the mid to late 50s, and we switched over to growing grapes, and we've been growing grapes ever since. We started, when my grandfather first planted the vineyards, we worked with a processor called Keystone for our first couple of years, and then after that we have been growing for Welch's for ever since then. The Lake Erie greatly affects the climate in this, from the I-90, what they call the I-90 corridor north. The warm water of the lake keeps the lake shore warmer in the fall, so we can harvest the grapes, where when you get down towards the Edinburgh area, the frost comes earlier and we don't have the influence of the lake to keep it warm, so that lake makes it ideal for grape growing in this area. My grandfather first started farming, the crop was much smaller because we could not, they picked it by hand. There was no mechanical machines or anything like that. Yeah, the grape picker actually was invented right next to our home farm. The man by the name of Roy Orton. And what he did is he patented the design of picking grapes by fingers or by rods that shake the grapes off the vine. And that was the patent that he put on his portion of that, and he still holds that patent today. We seem to be facing frost more often than we ever have in the past. You know, like this winter was very mild winter, and unfortunately, when we get a frost this late in the season, now, as far as we are out, it's very detrimental to the crop. We've seen a bad frost back in 2012, right. I believe it was. It was a season a lot like we have going right now. The grapes were out fairly far, fairly early, and we had a frost in it. It took our crop from down to about a quarter of what we normally pick. One of the things that we face with grapes is no matter how big our crop is, we have to treat them the same. We have to put the same amount of fertilizer, the same amount of spray material, and when your crop is big, which is like an average nice big crop is about roughly 10 tons the acre, you get a little bit of profitability. But when you pick a smaller crop, as far as, you know, I think in 2012 we picked down to about 2 tons the acre to 3, and it was cost very the same as it, very detrimental to the economy of farming, because it cost us the same to raise that 2-ton crop as it did to raise the 10-ton crop. It shortens our time in the spring when we can get our work done, and in the fall, if we get bad weather, it takes us roughly 4 weeks to contain the crop throughout the grape belt in this region. And when you add a early frost in the fall, what happens is it burns the leaves, and the leaves all drop off, and then the fruit drops off. So climate change is very, very detrimental to farming all the way around. You don't have any room for error. It puts some people out of business, unfortunately, because they just are operating on a thin line, and when something like that happens, it pushes them over and they can't recoup. We are actually getting paid by the processors roughly the same amount of money as my grandfather was per ton. Now, you say, well, how can you stay in business? And that's 40-some years later, 50-some years later, that we're getting the same kind of money. The way we've been able to stay in business is we've pushed our farms to the max. We're picking more. We're picking more per ton than my grandfather was. We're trying new things to push the vineyards. And like I said, when you have climate change and a detrimental frost, you've pushed it right out to the max, and it's devastating.